want to welcome you to our annual donor and volunteer appreciation party. This year we're holding it on World Refugee Day, which has incredible significance for me. This is a day that the UN has set aside to say, we want to recognize the plight of refugees around the world, and we wanted to be part of that. It really is a chance for us as a family, as a group of members of a community to get together, share stories, understand each other, understand the challenges that we face, and work together to see and talk about what's coming and the future that we have ahead of us over the next 2 to 5 years. I spent most of my career in finance and insurance, and I retired a number of years ago. And I've been working with Neighbors since it was formed back in 2016. I've been involved and interested in refugees, partly because I spent a lot of time in Central America, South America. I worked for another volunteer group called Business Community that built homes and schools in Nicaragua and the Dominican Republic. And I saw the conditions that people lived in, even though they're relatively well-off third world countries. And I could understand why people would want to leave there and come here. And it gave me some affinity for them or some empathy for them. And then on top of that, we saw all the pictures of Syrian refugees back in 2016 trying to get to Greece and Turkey and other places in Europe. I needed to do something to help these people. I have so many blessings that I wanted to share them and work with an organization that was willing to bring people here and give people a chance at what I got. Simple as that. You know, everyone talks about it. It's like, how can you change the world? The problem is so big. There's, I don't know, something like 30 million refugees out there, and we're bringing in just 1 or 2. At the beginning, it was just 1 or 2 a year. And I think I'm changing the world. If I change one person's life for the better, the world's better off, even if it's only because I've helped one family. And with Neighbors, we're now helping 30 or 40, 50 families a year. And I'm very proud of the organization that we've built and become since we started just 5 years ago.
My name is Jamel Wilson, and I'm currently the Director for Refugee Resettlement with Neighbors for Refugees. When we began in November of 2016, I was one of the 8 women sitting at the kitchen table. That was the beginning of all of this for us. We sat down together. None of us really knew each other. We came from different congregations, different towns, and our focus was that there is a problem. At that point, we were focused on the Syrian refugee crisis. And surely there is some way for us to meet the needs of some of the people in our community to help resettle refugees here in our community. And that's how we began. And then just a few months later, March 5th of 2017 was when we welcomed our first refugee, a young man from Pakistan. We have been able to help quite a few Syrian refugee families, mostly families who are up in New Haven area who were already here and needed a little bit more support. But when I think about what has happened in refugee resettlement, in what the needs are, and in how Neighbors for Refugees has been able to be involved since we began in 2016, I'm really amazed. I never envisioned Neighbors for Refugees growing into the organization it is today. We were just a group of people trying to figure out how to resettle a family, whatever family needed us. And we grew from that into an organization that's been able to help so many hundreds and hundreds of refugees in various ways, sometimes resettlement, sometimes with microloans to start a business, Sometimes it's just providing the furniture and setting up an apartment for a family. That's all they need. With grants, we've done so much with our grant program that I feel just, I'm so grateful for what we've been able to do. The first refugee resettled just became a citizen at the end of March. Oh, he's so proud. I'm so proud of him because I know the kind of young man he is and what his focus is. His focus is on using the money he earns as a long haul truck driver to take care of people who needed to be taken care of. That's what he does. He's not, his American dream doesn't have anything to do with getting rich. It has to do with having enough resources to be able to help people. It's a privilege, really. It's a privilege to work with the volunteers in Neighbors for Refugees. It's a privilege to have relationships with the refugees and learn from them and let them have an impact on our lives. I know I'm a different person than I was 6 years ago. I'm learning from them. I just came back from being on vacation and it so touched me. I got texts from a few of our refugee families saying, "Welcome home. We missed you so much. When can you come over and let us fix you something to eat?" And I just never expected that. I never expected that. And it really touches me that I matter to them as a person and they matter to me as people. And I miss them when I don't get to be with them. So it's an amazing thing to be able to do this. And, you know, we have volunteers who are involved in large ways and small ways and everything in between. There are so many ways to help with this work. It's not just for people who have 20 hours a week to devote to it. There's always a way to be involved if you're interested. So I hope you'll get in touch with us and let us offer you a place in this amazing organization. Thank you.
I'm Nazanin Shoyer, and I'm on the board of Neighbors for Refugees. And I joined a few years ago because of the cause, obviously, to me. And I was impressed by the few events that I had seen and the interactions I had had at the time with folks who were on the board, and the level of commitment was extraordinary, but also the focus on the folks, the families that we are helping. And I was very happy to see that in our neighborhood, frankly. I had been involved in similar entities and organizations, but up in Connecticut and elsewhere. So it was really good to see that happening here. And then meeting with the folks, you know, the families who are resettling and starting a completely new chapter of their life in the most difficult circumstances. I have great respect for them. I also left the country I was born in at a very young age, Tehran, Iran. So that is why it spoke to me, because I had been on that journey of what does it mean to start your life as a child, right? When you have no control over what's happening and the decisions that are made, and you have no clarity into what the future may bring. And so I came at it from that perspective, having lived through something similar. Of course, everyone's story and journey is different, and yet the level of eagerness to create a life. And I did meet with a few folks who were, you know, I have to say there was no bitterness. There was no looking back. It was forward looking, and how can I help my family, and how can I build a future, a better future for my family. So that's something that, I think all of us have to keep in mind, that despite the difficulties that these families go through, and in circumstances they have not chosen, they really want to become self-sufficient, to create their lives and really be part of a community, the new community. We all do our little part, and I chose a number of years ago to leave my corporate job and to go to the development sector, to the nonprofit sector, because I wanted to be able to think at least that I'm making a difference, and that I'm working for an organization that's purpose-driven and mission-based. So that is also my day job, is with nonprofits, and it's great, right? It's great to know that you're doing your share, and you're helping in some way. But it is absolutely true, whether it's more a local organization or a global organization, when it really comes to life is when you meet the folks that you're serving, that you're helping, that you're supporting, whether it's programs overseas or right here in our neighborhood. That is when you truly see, okay, now I see why it truly matters, our work, and how we are transforming people's lives. So.
I'm Rick Barry. I started volunteering with Neighbors back when it started, but became far more involved in the last year and a half, joined the executive committee and the board. Initial focus being to help with communications and what I would generally call marketing, that we do a better systematic job of engaging with and attracting volunteers, donors, what have you. And it's a great group of people. I think my original involvement was because of Jamel Wilson and Frank Pearson and a number of other people, including my wife, Carla Berry, who just sort of rolled up their sleeves and jumped into helping what was the first individual that was settled by Neighbors, I guess now 5+ years ago. What's been exciting is the opportunity to sort of have hands-on tangible involvement with a number of different refugees, for very specific purposes. So the first refugee that Neighbors settled was a young man from Pakistan. And I would join Carla and we'd go have coffee every week or two, just to have practice English conversation. I helped a team move him into his first house. Somebody kindly offered an in-law apartment that he lived in for a while, and then helped move him to a different apartment situation. Carla and I worked very closely with an Afghan family. The father was an SIV, and he and his wife and 4 sons came to the US probably now 3 or 4 years ago. And Carla and I would work on, I think it was a weekly basis for a while, along tag teaming with some other volunteers to tutor the 2 younger boys. And that was a combination of looking over their homework, helping them understand what some of the homework was about, helping them learn how to read. And it was just delightful because these boys were so motivated. And it was a wonderful window on kind of their home life and helping them really make some progress adapting to what is a totally foreign, brand new country for them. I was involved with an organization for 20 years called the Princeton in Asia program. And basically it was a matter of working with mostly rural parts of Asia to find 1 to 2 year jobs for people in the US who've graduated or are soon to graduate from college. And it's wonderful. You take some essentially kid who's got a good education and may have grown up in New York or rural Alabama, and you drop kick them into the Mekong Delta in southern Vietnam to go into a school and teach English and live locally because they don't get paid much. And they are going to come back with a completely different worldview of the common denominators amongst people from all sorts of diverse backgrounds, as well as the things that are unique to different communities. And I think once one has that experience, you are so much more likely to just be open and want to hear what somebody's story is,
Yeah.
and take them at face value, as opposed to looking at it through the lens of, ignorant prejudices and things of that sort.
Yeah.
As somebody said, everybody's got a story, and if you just take the time to understand it, everybody's better off for it.
Exactly.
So my name is Tien. I'm 23 and currently live in Queens. However, I was born and raised in New Rochelle in Westchester County. So I joined NFR just over a year ago, back in March of 2021, mainly thanks to my parents. They've lived in New Rochelle for a very long time and have, in the past several years, recently become a lot more invested in the community, wanting to give back and to contribute, especially, with all the horrible things going on in the world lately, really looking for ways to get involved. And they found out about NFR through Nextdoor, the online kind of neighborhood message board service, and they saw that they were looking for a person with technology experience to help maintain website and things like that, and they thought it was perfect for me, so they sent it my way, and eventually I got involved with NFR through that. Just reached out to them with my credentials and my experience and everything. And I realized that, it was a good opportunity for me to contribute something meaningful to, my town, my community as well. So I thought it would be a great experience. So that's how I joined NFR. And in particular, the fact that it's a refugee resettlement organization really stuck to me. We've pulled out of Afghanistan. We've seen all the crisis in Ukraine going on with the war. And of course, everything else that's happening in other countries like Syria, Yemen, etc. What really motivated me to want to start contributing some time and talent towards this organization. So specifically, one thing that I've come to really appreciate about NFR is how they use the word hyper-local, which I think is a really great word for describing this. Of course, there are plenty of big international or nationwide refugee-based or refugee-focused organizations. And that's great, of course. I'm glad that they're there. But I feel like if you're involved with one of those, usually the average person will just be contributing like a monthly donation, for example, or a one-time donation. In my opinion, it's harder to really feel that you're making an impact. Of course, not saying it's not useful or anything. Of course, it's very useful, but you don't know where your money is going. You don't necessarily know what you're contributing to, like what the money is going to be buying, who's going to be getting it. With NFR, it's different, right? We're a small organization, so of course we can't help nearly as many people, but the people that we can help, we really, we all contribute with things, our time and our talents towards really improving people's lives, whether that's getting them settled in an apartment or a house somewhere, helping integrate them into their community, providing education and counseling and things like that. We may not be able to reach out to as many people, but I feel like the people that we do help really can truly, be helped in a very, very meaningful and personal, in person to person way. And that always struck me as very different and very special about NFR.
I retired probably 20, 25 years ago. I was a school counselor and primarily assisting kids, pretty privileged kids getting into college. But I had done other volunteer work in the community. And when the Syrian refugee crisis started to happen, I said to our minister at the time, a guy named Bill Crawford, who was very active in our community, Bill, what are we doing as Presbyterians to do something about this? And he said, go to this meeting tomorrow. So I did. And the meeting was at a woman's house in Larchmont. There were probably, Pat was there, probably, I don't know, 10 or 12 people. And it was the beginning of Neighbors for Refugees. At which point I think they went on and formed a board. And I said, no, I didn't want to do that, but that I did have educational experience. So when we got the first family, Well, actually, the first person was a single man. It was really interesting. So they called on Pat and I, that he clearly was beyond school age, and we helped him get into English classes. And then the next time.
And arrange for tutors, right? Like he had
Yes.
Terry and a few other people who would go to him and talk to him. Yeah.
Right. And so then the next time we really got involved with the schools is when an Afghan family came and were living in an apartment in Yonkers. So we had to interface with Yonkers schools, get them registered, which was never easy. But once we got them into schools, I must say our experience with Yonkers schools personnel has been terrific. We've never talked to anybody who hasn't been helpful and really understand the plight of these kids. So, and that continues, with the Kern family. So that's sort of how we got involved. And certainly Pat can tell more about our background. We're comfortable dealing with schools and school children, I think. And that's,
Yeah.
right. I think.
And parents, comfortable dealing with parents in relation to what they need to do for the schools, for their kids, with the schools, because it's very different in this country from the countries they come from in terms of the interaction expected of parents in schools in the United States. Would you agree, Penny?
Yes, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I think the one other thing that certainly I have learned is, which I knew intellectually, how hard it is to learn to speak English, let alone what the social dynamics are in this country as opposed to Afghanistan or Sudan or Pakistan. Learning English is just not easy. And, we've taken them to classes, we've supplied a lot of tutors, but it's really, the research is clear. It's the second generation that become Americans. It's hard for the parents, I think.
Yeah. But they work really hard to try and make it financially, and that's where their energies have to go, really.
Right.
And some of them, I mean, we live in Westchester County where the education expectations are very high. And we assume everyone is that way. And not everyone is like that, not even in the United States, so they come from other cultures. They're dealing with a new country, new grocery store system, everything. And we're like, and you should go to school 4 days a week. Well, you know what? Some of them are not into
Well, and then one time we had found a class for one of these women to take, and she had to take a bus. So Pat and I looked at each other and said, have you ever been on a bus in Westchester? No, neither of us had. But Pat learned how to do it, and she taught this woman how to do it. So.
and she went, but only, finally she went regularly because she met a friend there. Remember that? Like, there's more than just learning a language that helps them feel comfortable. My story is very similar to Penny's. I'm a parishioner at St. Augustine's Catholic Church, which is right down the street from Penny's church. And you probably remember that picture, it was in all the newspapers, of the little boy being carried out of the water. I think it was off the coast of Italy, dead in somebody's arms because he had drowned, escaping. And I went to our adult faith formation person, Lou Doyle, and I said to her, what are we doing? And she said, you know what? There's a group forming. Why don't you go and see if there's something that you can do and the parish can do? So I wound up at the same meeting as Penny and met Penny and the other people there who also wanted to do something, who are all from Larchmont area, but different backgrounds. Some were there from churches, some were there just as neighbors, just wanted to do something locally for the people who were escaping from Syria. And one of them was Syrian, actually. One of the women was from Syria.
Two of them were Syrian.
Two of them.
Right.
So like Penny, my background is in education. I was a school social worker for 40 years. And so knew how to negotiate the school system and figured that that's something that I could do also as a social worker. I'm good at like making phone calls and, asking people for things like, give them a free pool pass. Remember the Y in Yonkers gave the family a free pool pass, and getting some resources for them, and then collecting the names of people who volunteer to be tutors that sign up with Neighbors for Refugees. They're interested in tutoring. Some of them are ESL teachers, some of them are teachers, retired teachers, and some of them are just people who want to be helpful. Well, one thing I've also gotten out of this is I've made a friend.
Yes,
I never knew
I would
Peggy.
agree. That's absolutely wonderful. Pat and I did not know each other, and I think regardless if the work goes on, we appreciate each other's friendship for sure.
Nice. That's the best.
Hello, everyone. My name is Damina Ahmad. I'm Kurdish from Syria. I have 3 kids. I have been in America since 2017. I left my country 2012. We were in Malaysia for 5 years. Then we get resettled in America. My husband works and I work as a seamstress. I do alteration. Then I had like a problem because I need customers. So that wasn't easy for me to get the level really I have to be. After like 1 year or so, I knew Holly Phoenix. She's from Neighbors for Refugee. And we talked about business and many things. And then I met Ellen. So I was struggling with everything. I was working in factory in my country. So they helped me to build my business. And that was really, really very helpful for me. If I need something, I was just get back to them. If somebody emailed me, I was forwarded to 3 of them. And they were always standing with me to help me to answer customer. We start to work and my business start to get improved. And I start to understand. And then the pandemic happened. It was 2020, beginning of 2020. So all people start to stay home. And also that it was big challenges for us to survive during the pandemic. They offer me to work with them, Neighbor for Refugee. They offer me to work with them to make a mask. In that time, it was very hard to find masks. So we start to work with them and like a group, me and some family from Afghanistan, we worked with them. And it was really also like it was helping us to survive, you know. So, excuse me, my customer come. I have to stop a little bit, even though I told him to come later, sorry.
My name's Will Ginsberg. I've been a part of NFR, Neighbors for Refugees, for 4 or 5 years now. I am a cross-border logistics entrepreneur who was fortunate enough to be able to, quote unquote, retire young. And I feel like my career and my life experience has taught me a few things and that I could potentially make myself useful in a variety of areas after my career ended. So when I joined Neighbors for Refugees, folks thought I might be a good fit to start a group within it called the Business Incubator. I did that along with my compatriots, Ellen and Emmanuel Dupuis d'Angiac, who live in New Rochelle. I live in Larchmont, so it's easy to either meet virtually or get together. And they are also entrepreneurial in their history. They've owned small businesses like wine shops. They've owned a restaurant, and they have a very passionate interest in helping refugee and immigrant communities assimilate and that's kind of what drew all of us to NFR. So the three of us began the Business Incubator group, and basically the premise is that a lot of folks who come here have skills they bring with them from their lives where they came from. However, they don't have American business understanding, expertise. They're not familiar with our regulations. They don't understand how to sell or to market. And our role is to help them understand what those things are and help them determine, first of all, whether they want to start a business here, because in some instances, we've had clients that don't. They realize that it's not just as easy as hanging up a shingle where they come from. We have a higher bar of standards and regulations that you have to go through, and more risk, depending on what your business is, that involves investment of sometimes very limited funds. Amina is a great story because she basically came here with her family, and I say this in the most admiring way possible, with the shirts on their back, not much else. And they came here, knew they had to make a living. They showed unbelievable resilience, and they started to make a living. She speaks very kindly of us, like we did everything, but the reality of it is we didn't do nearly as much as she did. And when the pandemic began to subside, her family decided they wanted to move to Danbury. So we all, Amina too, the four of us, were determined to have her start to build a business in Danbury that maybe didn't rely so much on those kinds of things, and was organic, sustainable, residential customers who truly needed alterations in Danbury. Her business started out and did okay. Little by little, she got a little deeper into it. Now she has, I would say, a thriving business in the Danbury area. She's done it through online marketing and Google Ads, and we just engaged a company to redo her website and amp up her organic search. We might do a deal with a hockey team that gave her some business last year in terms of having her stitch all their jerseys. And they're semi-pro. Or actually they're professional, low-level professional. They need work done all the time. They're local in Danbury, and we may do a marketing sponsorship deal with them and attract business from all the youth leagues in the area. I can't tell you how excited I am when I see the success that Amina's business is getting. It makes me as excited as if it were my own. And I'm eager to keep helping her until she kicks me to the curb because she's tired of it.
That was terrific.
It was true. I meant every word.
I know. Amina, do you have anything that you want to say? Anything more that you want to say that I didn't give you a chance to talk about?
I just want to say thank you for refugee organization. As much I thank them is not enough. The thanks word is not enough for them, because I wasn't imagined to get this level where I am now. Not because I'm unable, no, because I'm from different environment. I grew up in different country, different culture, different language. So many things is different. It was big challenge for me to get through all those things and go through those process alone. They were every single step they were pushing me forward. They were supporting me. They were making me motivated. I did a mistake. I did so many things, but those mistakes didn't stop me. They were always pushing me. They were making this mistake is a kind of normal. Everybody can make a mistake, but those things, they didn't stop me, and they were always standing with me. And until this moment, they're standing with me. I really, the big thank from my deep heart to all of them. Every single person in this country helped me, even by word. So I just want to say thank you for everyone, for everything they did for me, for my family.
I'm Pam Bolton. I have a background actually in international work in global public health. And so I've been certainly very kind of internationally focused for my whole career. And I think I started to get, I worked more in health than in humanitarian work, but I did work with one organization that works a lot with refugees called Concern Worldwide, an Irish headquartered organization. And it was around 2014 into the Syrian conflict that I really started to be distressed about the plight of all of these people who were streaming out of Syria. And so I wanted at that time to get involved and to figure out some way to take action. And I guess it took me a while, because it wasn't until 2019 or 2020 that I learned about Neighbors for Refugees. I'm really the new kid on the block because, as you probably know, most of the leadership and many of the volunteers have been with Neighbors for years. And I'm so impressed. I mean, I've worked in the nonprofit world with lots of people who are in mission-driven or purpose-driven organizations, but the fact that everybody in Neighbors is volunteering their time and has been so loyal and steady is just amazing to me. So much ability to get things done on a shoestring budget, and really all the money that we raise can go into the families and the things that they need. So that is amazing to me.
My name's Allie Seiss, and I got involved with Neighbors for Refugees about a year ago, a little bit less. And I have mostly been on the communications team doing social media and just helping where I can on the communications team, whether that's newsletters or other content. I got involved with Neighbors because I was looking for something local, something involved, and something where I could basically see my contribution instead of just donating money or items. So as soon as I had an initial call with Rick and Elaine, and they were just so warm and welcoming and positive. And then I had the larger communications call with Frank and Mike and Tian and Pam, and everyone was just so supportive and really educational too, to me, to the different parts of the process of resettlement and what's going on in our world and in our neighborhood, and how we can make a difference. And I think the fact that it's 100% volunteer was big for me. A lot of the organizations have a small percentage of volunteers, or 50-50, or it's unclear. And I think that the commitment that like the core group of people have had for the past 5 years is really impressive. There's a group by me that worked with a family 5 years ago, a Syrian family, and then worked with another family now. And that's amazing too. But I think to keep at it consistently, not just when there's a crisis, but realizing that there's always a crisis, and that there's always a need to resettle refugees and help refugees and asylees was really impressive to me.
I'm Bob Klein. I live in Scarsdale, New York. I am one of the original group that assembled to create Neighbors for Refugees. In my case, you know, there were a couple of things that were important to me. And I'm speaking a little bit for my wife, Jane, but I think what I'm going to say is she would agree is true. We were not interested in an organization that only wanted our money. We wanted to be actively involved. Okay. So I'm an architect, so I have to find quote unquote affordable housing, which by definition does not exist in Westchester. People would argue that I kind of have good apartment karma. I somehow do manage to find these apartments. Every time I'm asked, I'm like, oh my God, I'm never going to find an apartment. How am I going to do this? And just so you know, Bonnie, usually the time frame is you have 3 weeks to find it, sign the lease, and furnish it. So it's not like, oh, Bob, you know, don't worry, you know, you got 6 months, you know, don't, you know, it's like, no, they're showing up at Kennedy Airport, you know, in 3 weeks, maybe 2 weeks, actually. Our job is to create sort of a safe place for people to land. And, you know, I mean, realistically, we're helping a minuscule percentage, but you can't stop doing it. You know, you have to kind of do the little bit that you can do.
I am Jane Klein, and I've been a board member of Neighbors for Refugees since the fall of 2016, just prior to the election of Donald Trump. And so my husband and I, you know, became, you know, among two of the first, I don't know how many there were, 7 or 9 board members. And that March, we had an opportunity to bring in a young man who was probably at the time about 31. We had an opportunity to bring him in from, he was coming to us through Sri Lanka, but he was Pakistani. And we got the, you know, we were working very quickly to get an apartment ready for them. There was a lovely family in Mamaroneck, Rhinebeck, who had offered an apartment in their home to us. So they had an, in any event, we fixed that apartment up beautifully. We scrubbed it down. We got furniture from every place you can imagine. We stocked it with food. And Bob and my husband, Bob, and I, and I think 3 other people went to the airport to meet Bilal. There was somebody who was guiding him through customs and so on. And I just remember sitting in the airport. I hadn't had lunch yet. And I brought my lunch with me. I'm sitting in the airport in a chair outside of customs, waiting for this young man to come. And I'm like, I'm getting very nervous. I had to sit, which was, you know, that which was a sign that I was nervous. I had to sit then. And I just was thinking about this young man coming from, I don't know how many miles away that would be, 10,000 miles from us, coming to America, a country so foreign to him. We didn't know very much about him other than the fact that he was, maybe we knew his age, maybe not. We knew he was single. We didn't know how much English he had. We didn't know how much education he had. But I just remember being a nervous wreck waiting for him to come and thinking, you know, to myself, what would this have been like if I had been that refugee, leaving my country or leaving a country where I had been in some kind of a refugee camp? I believe he was there for probably close to 3 to 5 years. Anyway, just imagining myself making this long journey. And as he walked through the door, I just kind of had the feeling, this must be our new refugee to America. It just gave me such a sense of pride that we were doing this. It gave me such a sense of hope for this young man. And the 5 of us, he didn't come with very much luggage, but the 5 of us in a car drove him up to Westchester, up to Rhinebeck and settled him into his apartment. But it was just probably one of the most exciting things, other than maybe the birth of one of my kids or both of my kids, bringing him into this country and saving him from the religious persecution that he was going through in his home country. So we're able at this point, whereas we used to say, oh, we settled one family, a family of one, or we settled a family of 6 this year, we're now able to say we're settling 60 people,
Right.
or maybe more even, in a very short span of time. So we've grown in that respect. Our fundraising efforts have been unbelievable in the last year. So, it's been a really, it's been a very positive experience, I would say, for most of the people who are either on the board or who are volunteers within our organization.
I'm Sally Hoffman, and I'm a member of a small Reform Jewish community called Chavarat Tikva. And I got involved very early with Neighbors for Refugees, way back in 2016, when there were a lot of Syrian refugees that needed resettling, and supported the organizations and did whatever I could. And then about 1.5 years ago, Jamel approached me and asked me if I could records for the financial books and records for Neighbors for Refugees. As a Jew, I'm very invested in what the Jewish community calls tikkun olam, and that is repairing the world. And I just feel strongly that we have to help people less advantaged than us and do whatever we can. And refugees talk to me especially because throughout history, Jews have been refugees, time and time again. And of course, most starkly and recently, World War II, when the Jews were refugees, those that could flee Hitler, but most countries didn't take them in. And then after the war, those who did survive were refugees. And it's always been an important part of Tikkun Olam in the Jewish and just knowing what's happening throughout the world today, where there are so many people that have to leave because of war. You have climate change. You're going to have climate change refugees. And now, of course, you've got Ukrainian refugees, and there's so many people that need help that I think it's important to step up and do whatever you can.
So my name is Barbara Flickinger, and my role is to pick up diapers for refugee mothers. We have many young mothers, young children, and I pick up diapers from another nonprofit called 914 Cares over on the other side of the county, and then I take them to different mothers once a month, and sometimes as our group has expanded, I do sometimes give it to people who are more local, who are in touch with the families, just to make the distribution easier. So that's pretty much my role. I mean, I volunteered at other kind of one-off things, different drives and collections and that kind of thing. But that's my main function. One woman, the first time I went, I met her husband and 2 of her sons, and then the baby. And then the next time I went, she had like a little plate of food for me, of her typical food, and explained what everything was. And it was very sweet and very welcoming. I try and be upbeat and say hi and how are you, and the baby's big, and give them their diaper. So it's just I think just a point of contact for some of the women who are home all day with their babies. I think they are very focused on being a good neighbor to refugees and welcoming them, and they have a very ambitious goal to really participate in the resettlement of a large number of refugees, whether it's 100% our responsibility or helping other organizations by supporting them. I mean, it's really very ambitious and sincere and well meant, and they're doing it. So it's quite something.
My name is Anne Fry. I came to Neighbors first. I heard about it from Mara Gross, who is she works at Sarah Lawrence, and she was working with Hearts for Home and Neighbors for Refugees. And she told me about it before I retired, and she said, this is something you'd really, really enjoy. And it does. I really like helping people. And also I'm a first generation. My parents came from Ireland, but still, it's not as bad as poor people coming from Afghanistan and Ukraine and Sudan. But I remember asking my mother, why did you leave Ireland? Such a beautiful place. And she said, well, you can't eat rocks. And, so everybody has their own reasonings of why they came here. And it's a great country. And I just wanted to be the one to introduce them to who we are. So that's a big reason. And I was helping with the volunteers that are requesting to work with Neighbors. And also I'm working with the family from Sudan. They were 8 years in a refugee camp in Jordan, and they came here March 4th, and they have 4 children and the parents, and they didn't speak any English. So we got to the health clinic at Mount Vernon right away and got them situated with medicals. The 3 older boys we have them in the museum school. The school systems in Yonkers, I can't say enough. They've been wonderful. And the oldest boy goes for English classes on Saturdays. Now the mom, Nagwa, is going to English classes also 4 days a week. So things will get better. The dad has some truly big medical hurdles ahead of him. He was injured in Darfur in 2003, 2004, I'm not sure which one. And he was shot in his foot. When they've done x-rays, they ask him, they say, what's the pain level, 1 to 10? And he always says 10. So they still has some bullet fragments in his foot and some bones that were shattered. And he has a long road ahead of him with medical appointments. So the team is Elaine Wanderer, Richard, I don't know how to say Richard's last name right, and Guillermo. And they have, Elaine Wanderer has really been the guiding force with bringing a lot of them to the doctor's appointments and things like that. So I help more so in the beginning, getting them situated with school and everything else. But so it's a real team effort. It's such a gratifying thing. They are so thankful for any help that they get. I mean, I can't even imagine coming to such a different environment, coming to the United States, but coming to New York. It's a lot to take in, and you just want to help them feel at home and feel calmer, that we're here to help them. And I tell you, everybody that I've ever, I've been to the health clinics, I've been to the schools, everybody wants to help them. It's really, really gratifying to see how, you always hear the bad stuff. And this has really been truly a wonderful experience of meeting great people, and just everybody that we encounter has been wonderful. So it's a nice experience for helping people, but it's also, you're meeting some really nice people.
All right. Hi, my name is Ruth Guyer. I'm on the board of Neighbors for Refugees. And I came into this group several years ago, right after I retired. I wanted to get involved in refugee work because, well, I've been involved in human rights work for actually decades. It's something that matters a lot to me, people's rights being taken away, the refugee issue, immigration. It's something that touches my heart. And I feel like it's an obligation to do something, not just worry about it or complain about it. So at the time, personal families weren't really being allowed to bring refugees here into their community or their homes. And I started looking at churches, and our church, St. John's Church in Larchmont, St. John's Episcopal, was the church that responded to me, Jamel Wilson. And she said, "You are most welcome to join us. We are just beginning to have organizing meetings for a new group." Boy, I was there. And, the rest is history. I became very involved, joined the board, and have a lot of responsibilities. And it has been one of the most satisfying things I've ever done. Honestly, we have been resettling families, so I get to meet them, help them out, babysit for the kids, drive them to places they need to go before they have a car or figured out transportation. And one by one, we've met families from all over the world, and they're now living in our area, the greater New York City area, all around us. And when we have these picnic gatherings every summer, you get to see them all. And that's the work that we do, I don't even call it work. I also work a lot on committees. I lead our advocacy committee where we help with issues. We advocate, educate, contact our representatives to ask them to support legislation that's going to help refugees, fund refugee programs. And I also am the chair of a grants committee. We give small grants to individuals that may not be a family we resettled, but they are all over our area. These are refugees with no one to help them out when they get in dire need because of maybe illness, loss of their jobs. We gave a lot of grants during the COVID period when they lost their jobs, and their income was essential for just paying that month-to-month rent on their meager salaries. So we could help them with that, food cards, and just about any need that families might have. We're there to help out with it. And as I said, I'm really proud to be a part of this group, and it's very meaningful. So it's a lot of hours spent, and frankly, it's the best hobby in the world.
Hi, my name's Allison Lowy, and I am a volunteer with Neighbors for Refugees. I do what I mostly do at the moment is resettlement. I'm working with 2 Afghan families living in New Rochelle. I first got involved with Neighbors by speaking with someone who happened to be on the board, and I was looking for something to do post-COVID that had some sort of meaning for me, and working with Afghan refugees just jumped out at me. So I feel fortunate to have found this. I was asked to be on a group of leaders to resettle some people in Brooklyn. And by doing that sort of from a very remote perspective, I learned what it took to resettle a family. And when these 2 families from Afghanistan were resettled in New Rochelle, I took on the leadership role. They're coming from a place where their language is so different. You know, I speak a little bit of French. It's not helpful at all. Alphabet is totally different. It's impossible for me to figure out, obviously, but helping them navigate a little bit. I put a lot of work into helping them find a job. And one of the men started recently working, which is very exciting. And he feels really great about this because both of the men were unhappy with the fact that they were not working, and they were very eager to get jobs. So that feels really good. They clearly went through a very difficult time to get to New Rochelle, and I feel really happy about being able to help them. They're wonderful people. They're generous. They're so generous. Every time I come, they're asking me to stay for lunch. They are curious. They're friendly. They want to learn. They want to support themselves. And what Neighbors is doing is helping them learn how to make it in this country. Volunteering for Neighbors gives you, I know this sounds trite, but it gives you more than what you give. You get more back.